Welcome to the 4 Bells, where we are doing workout from home 70. We've made it all the way to 70, and thank you for joining us, guys. Today, our workout has a big focus on posterior chain development. We're going to do some work for the hamstrings and the glutes. And to get us started today, we are going to do these 3 things to get us warmed up. We're going to do some bootstrapper squats with a hangout. So basically a nice dynamic stretch for the hamstring, as well as looking at squat mechanics. From there, we're going to look at the inchworm, again, another dynamic way to look at hamstring flexibility. And then from there, we're going to do some single leg deadlifts, which is going to help us not only balance and stabilize on one leg, but also use our hamstring and our glutes to stabilize us in hinging patterns. So we're going to do these 3 things 3 times to get us ready for our strength piece today. Let's take a little look at those 3 movements. For our warm-up, for our posterior chain focused leg day today, we don't need anything. All you need is your beautiful body and the floor. That's all you need. So our first exercise we're looking at is the bootstrapper squat. So we're doing a bootstrapper squat, which has squat mechanics and hamstring flexibility built into it, but we're also going to be doing a little bit of a hangout in between reps. So that means I should probably start in a hangout position, which means I'm going to hang out in the bottom of my squat and just see how it feels to be down here. From there, I'm going to grab hold of my toes. I'm going to straighten out those legs as much as possible. That's my bootstrap squat. Now I come back down into my squat. So sometimes call this squat pry, where we're kind of prying around. How do things feel? And all I'm looking to do is send those hips up, straighten out the hamstrings, bum down, chest high, and back into that squat for 5 reps. From there, we're going to get into an inchworm. With our inchworm, I'm going to start. I'm going to bend forwards, hands on the floor. I'm going to walk my hands out. If you're feeling dangerous, you can throw in a push-up, but you don't have to if you don't want to. And then from there, keeping the legs straight, I'm going to walk my hands back and get my hands as close to my feet as possible. I stand up, hands back down, walk them forwards, maybe a push-up, maybe not. And then I walk those hands back in, trying to get the hands as close to the feet as possible without bending the legs. From there, single leg deadlift. So we're going to be doing Romanian deadlifts today. So it's like a Romanian deadlift, but just on one leg. I'm going to push the hip back, load the hamstring, load the glute. Standing on just one leg, I hinge, load the hamstring, load the glute, bring the torso to parallel, making sure that I'm not reaching with the back and I've got a rounded back. I want to keep a nice and neutral spine. So I close the hip, load the hamstring, load the glute, drive the hip forward, squeeze the glutes at the top. And we're doing 5 per side. So it's going to be bootstrapper squat with a hangout for 5 reps. From there, inchworm for 5 reps. From there, single leg deadlifts for 5 per side. We're doing that for 3 rounds in the warm-up today. In today's strength piece, we have got multiple looks at the posterior chain. Really 2 looks at the posterior chain. We are doing some Romanian deadlifts, looking at true hinging patterns. So no hips moving up and down, just hips moving back, where we are looking to load the low back, the glutes, the hamstrings, and really get a nice big amount of stretch and load on the posterior chain. We're going to be doing Romanian deadlifts, and then looking at working on those glutes, we're going to do some hip thrusts today as well. So we're going to do 5 sets. Each set is 3 minutes long, split into 2 90-second windows. In my first 90-second window, I'm going to do Romanian deadlifts for 45 seconds. So this is more of a muscular endurance set in the sense that we're trying to get an amount of work done within 45 seconds. And because you're at home with limited weights maybe, or maybe you have a full gym, depending on what you have available is going to dictate how much time under tension, how many reps you get in during this time, this 45 seconds. So we'll talk about that more in a second. From there, in my next 90 seconds, a minute of it is going to be done hip thrusts, or doing hip thrusts. I'm going to be doing 30 seconds on one leg and then 30 seconds on the other. And let's spend a little bit of time talking about how these time sets can work depending on what you have at home. With the Romanian deadlift, if we're comparing the Romanian deadlift to a conventional deadlift, it's more of a true hinge in the sense that we are just moving the hips back, we're hinging the hips backwards and then bringing them forwards, trying to engage the posterior chain throughout. In a conventional deadlift, we would start by pushing the hips back as we return to the floor and then bring the hips down. In a Romanian deadlift, we're just pushing the hips back. So hopefully you can see the difference between how the hips just move backwards and forwards rather than back and down. So when I'm doing a Romanian deadlift, personally, I like to start from the top down. The reason why I like to start from the top down, and I'll show you what that means in a second, is it really, for me, feels like I can keep my back nice and stable. I can start and keep my glutes and hamstrings engaged from the beginning of the rep. I find when I start from the floor, sometimes it gets a little bit jerky, and in turn I can lose back position. So what I will do is I will do a conventional deadlift. So that means hips low, chest high. I'm going to deadlift up, and then from there I'm going to set up for Romanian deadlift. So that means maybe I turn my toes a little bit more straight forwards, and I'm going to lead with the hips back. So I want to imagine there's two ropes, a rope pulling my chest forwards and a rope pulling my hips back. So I get pulled in both directions, hips come back, big stretch through the hamstring, and then I drive the hips forwards. If you are very flexible through the hamstrings, you might find that you can touch the plates to the floor. And you might even find that you want to stand on a podium. But all we're really looking for today is a big stretch of the hamstring, drive the hips forward and squeeze the glutes, making sure that we keep that spine nice and neutral throughout. So as we're doing 45 seconds, you might want to start with a lighter weight. If it's possible, we can try and get a little bit heavier as those 5 sets go on. Either way, it's 45 seconds of Romanian deadlifts. So with the hip thrust, a fantastic exercise for glute development and pretty new in the strength development game. Hip thrusts have not been around for a very long time, popularized by the glute guy, Brett Contreras. Now, they are all the rage on Instagram, everyone's doing them all the time, and we are going to do them today as well, to add a little cherry on top of our posterior chain work. We're going to do some extra work for the glutes with some hip thrust. So how do I set up for the hip thrust? If you're doing a barbell hip thrust, I would make sure that whatever you are using is kind of like, in terms of the box I'm using or the bench I'm using, should be just underneath the shoulder blades. If it's too high and you've got a barbell, you have to wiggle yourself up. But luckily today, we are not doing barbell hip thrust, we are just doing a body weight hip thrust, trying to get as much work and contractile potential done in 30 seconds per leg. So when I'm setting up, ideally, as I said, the corner of the bench or the box you're using, put a mat over it, make sure there's something nice and soft, because the last thing you want is a sharp edge jabbing you in the middle back. I want to set up so that the corner of the box or bench I'm using is just underneath my shoulder blades. And I like to set up with both feet first. So I'll set up to make sure there's like a nice 90-degree bend in the knee. I'm going to come into a posterior pelvic tilt, so I pull my tail between my legs and squeeze the glutes, and I'm going to look through in front of me. From here, when I'm setting up to do a single leg hip thrust, I should bring one leg closer to my center of mass, other leg comes up, I'm going to bring the hip down, drive up, squeeze the glute. Bring the hip down, drive up and squeeze the glute. I'm going to spend 30 seconds on one leg, switcheroo, hip comes down, squeeze the glute and drive up, trying to squeeze each cheek as hard as possible through each rep. So I'm going to do 30 seconds on my second strongest side first, and then 30 seconds on my strongest side, no rest in between, 1 minute of glorious hip thrusts. For the conditioning piece today, we have 4 rounds of this 3-minute AMRAP. So AMRAP means as many rounds as possible, or reps as possible. In our rounds today, we have 3 movements to look at. We're going to do 3 squat thrusts. From there, we're going to do 6 per leg of a mountain climber. And from there, we're going to do 9 air squats. So those 3 movements are 1 round. We're going to see how many of those rounds we can do in 3 minutes. Once my 3 minutes is up, I'm going to pause my score. So let's say, for example, maybe I did 2 rounds and I got 6 mountain climbers done. When I've taken my 1 minute rest and I start in my second round of 3 minutes, I'm just going to start where I finished. So the idea today is keep a rolling score across all 4 rounds when we're doing these 3-minute windows of time. Let's take a look at all 3 of these, and we'll talk about scoring and having ourselves a glorious time during conditioning. In each of our 3-minute AMRAPs, we have 3 exercises. And just like the warm-up, we don't need any equipment today. It's nice and simple. Don't need a ton of stuff to get this done. All you need is enough space to do a plank, and you can make this workout happen. So our first exercise is a squat thrust, also known as basically like a burpee without the push-up. So the reason why we're doing that versus just doing a burpee is, if you know me, you know my feelings about burpees. They can quickly turn into kind of smushy, horrible things. With the squat thrust, all we're trying to do is level change, try and elevate the heart rate a little bit, try to elevate the blood pressure, basically create a nice aerobic response from today's workout. So how do I do a squat thrust? It is simple. I squat, I put my hands on the floor, I shoot out into a plank and come in. So my little mantra is simple. Hands down, feet out, feet in, stand up. When I'm doing my squat thrust, all I want to think about is making sure my plank is not sagging. So it means hands down. When I shoot those feet out, I don't want to have the hips sag. We're not doing a sprawl. We're not doing jiu-jitsu today. We need to make sure we're in a nice plank position. I jump back in and stand up. From there, when we've done, we get into mountain climbers. Mountain climbers are going to be dependent on how mobile your hips are. So at the 4 bells, how we like to do them is almost start in a sprinter stance. So that means knee behind one elbow, and all I'm going to do is switch sides. So one little jump if I can. 6, 6, 5, 5. And if you've got super mobile hips, maybe you're going to bring the foot up by the hand. Maybe if you've got hips that are super tight, maybe it's a good idea just to drive the knee towards the chest for 6 reps per side. So whatever you want, if you can, try and keep it bouncy, but do what feels best for your hips. Last but not least, air squats. Always when doing air squats, no one likes a Johnny half rep. So make sure we get a full range of motion. We get all the way down there. Set my feet up. How do I like to squat? How are my hips designed? Where do my toes like to be? For me, pretty much straight down from the hips. I like to turn my toes out 10 degrees, keeping the chest up. I initiate with the hips. Knees come out. I pull the bum down. We come as low as possible, and then stand back up. Nice and purposeful reps. I'm going to do 3 squat thrusts, 6 per side of the mountain climber, 9 air squats, as many rounds as possible in 3 minutes. And we're doing that for 4 rounds with a 1-minute break in between. Keep a rolling score as you go. Have fun. And let us know how you go.